shifted into a loose, aggressive pursuit line. They were slow, yes, but gravity was a universal equalizer in a dive. The heavy, boilerplate hulls of the Soviet planes gathered terrifying momentum as they plunged after the crippled German fighters, their open underbelly bays continually spitting out the bulbous, radio-fused projectiles. Puff, puff, flash. The automated death followed them down. The proximity fuses didn't care about the Luftwaffe's superior aerodynamics or the pilot's decades of combined combat experience. The radio waves blathered out from the rocket noses continuously, bouncing off the retreating Messerschmitts, mapping the distance in microseconds, and detonating the high-explosive warheads with cold, mathematical certainty.
Lent saw a flash in his peripheral vision. The wingman's fighter was slapped sideways by a detonation 20 meters to his right. The concussive force blew the canopy clean off the cockpit, and the pilot was thrown out into the slipstream, his parachute instantly blossoming against the dark backdrop of the smoke. Lent was entirely alone. He flattened his dive just above the treetops, the yellow heads of the infinite sunflower fields blurring beneath his battered fuselage. Up ahead, the grass runway of his home airfield materialized through the smoke of the burning river crossing. The ground crews and mechanics who had laughed at the flying cigar just 2 days prior were now running for the deep concrete split trenches as the sky above them screamed with a terrifying automated fury. Lent chopped his throttle, dropping his landing gear with a pneumatic hiss just as his engine seized completely, spitting a final violent cloud of black oil over his canopy. The Messerschmitt bounced violently onto the dirt runway, its left tire blown by shrapnel, causing the fighter to ground loop violently before sliding to a halt in a cloud of dust and dry grass right in front of the squadron hut. Lent threw open his canopy, coughing violently as he dragged his bruised body out of the cockpit. He collapsed onto the wing, his eyes fixed on the sky. High above the airfield, the 12 Soviet aircraft swam through the black puffs of their own ordnance, completely untouchable. They didn't drop standard bombs. They didn't need to.
March 26th, 1945. 1420 hours. A dense, fog-shrouded valley road 5 miles northwest of Hanau, Germany. The red crosses painted on the roofs and doors of the 6 Dodge WC-54 ambulances were caked in thick, gray Rhineland mud, but they were still unmistakably visible. The convoy, transporting 40 critically wounded infantrymen from the front lines of the Third Army back to a mobile field hospital, was moving at a cautious crawl. The air was heavy with the damp chill of late winter, the silence of the forest broken only by the low, straining growl of the ambulance engines. In the lead vehicle, Captain Thomas Stern, a combat surgeon with the 4th Armored Division's medical detachment, rubbed his bloodshot eyes. "Keep a sharp lookout, Corporal," he muttered to the driver. "The line is moving fast, but there are still plenty of fanatical remnants floating around these woods." Before the driver could nod, the forest on both sides of the road erupted. Crack, crack, crack. A devastating volley of high-velocity 7.92mm rounds shredded the windshield of the lead ambulance. The corporal slumped over the steering wheel, killed instantly as the vehicle veered sharply into a ditch, its radiator hissing violently. It was a deliberate, cold-blooded ambush. A combat group of the Waffen-SS, numbering nearly 200 men, supported by a couple of armored half-tracks, had established a deadly kill zone. Disregarding the clear Geneva Convention markings, they fired directly into the soft-skinned, unarmored medical vehicles. "Out! Get out! Take cover in the ditch!" Captain Stern screamed, throwing himself out the passenger door as armor-piercing bullets chewed through the canvas and thin metal siding of the ambulances behind him. The scene inside the convoy descended into absolute terror. Medics and nurses leaped into the muddy ruts of the road, using their own bodies to shield the helpless, litter-bound patients who were screaming in agony as wood splinters and shrapnel tore through the ambulance interiors. Armed only with small-caliber M1 carbines and Colt pistols for self-defense, the medical detachment was completely outgunned. From the woodline, a German Hanomag half-track clanked forward, its front-mounted MG-42 machine gun spitting a continuous, blinding stream of white-hot tracers down the length of the convoy. The SS troops rose from the brush, preparing to move in and liquidate the survivors of the medical column. They believed they were cleaning up a defenseless target. They had no idea they had just stepped directly into the path of the most aggressive armored commander in American history. March 26th, 1945, 14:32 hours. The ditch alongside the Hanau Valley Road. The mud in the ditch was freezing, but Captain Stern barely felt it. He was pinned flat by a relentless, rhythmic scythe of machine gun fire that skipped off the asphalt inches above his helmet. Behind him, a young nurse, Lieutenant Evelyn Miller, was desperately pressing her hands over a patient's open chest wound, her white medical smock completely stained in crimson. "They're coming down the ridge!" Miller yelled over the deafening din of the firefight. "Captain, we can't stay here! They're going to flank the vehicles!" Through the smoke, Stern saw the heavy leather boots of the Waffen SS infantry advancing through the trees, their rifles raised. The Hanomag half-track idled in the middle of the road, its gunner traversing the MG-42 toward the last intact ambulance. The situation was entirely hopeless. Then, the very earth began to shake. It wasn't the sharp, concussive thud of enemy mortars. It was a massive, deep-chested mechanical roar. The unmistakable, terrifying scream of radial engines and heavy steel treads chewing through rock at breakneck speed. From the crest of the hill behind the convoy, a massive silhouette broke through the dense fog like a mechanical leviathan. It was an M4A3E8 Sherman tank, the Easy 8, and it was moving at a suicidal velocity. Painted on its side in bold, aggressive white letters was the insignia of General George S. Patton's personal vanguard, the 4th Armored Division. Boom! Without even coming to a halt, the Sherman's high-velocity 76mm main gun barked. The high-explosive shell streaked down the center of the road and slammed directly into the front grille of the German Hanomag. The impact was cataclysmic. The half-track's engine block exploded in a towering geyser of orange flame and black oil, throwing the vehicle backward and instantly silencing its deadly machine gun. "It's Patton's boys," Stern gasped, pushing his helmet back from his eyes. "The 4th Armored!" Behind the lead Sherman came a roaring pack of M3 half-tracks and M8 Greyhound armored cars, their heavy .50 caliber machine guns already spun up and singing a chorus of absolute destruction. The vanguard had arrived, and they weren't looking to take prisoners. March 26th, 1945, 14:40 hours. The Hanau Valley Road. The lead Sherman tank slammed its steel treads into the pavement, skidding violently to a halt right in front of Captain Stern's overturned ambulance. It formed an impenetrable, armor-plated shield between the desperate medics and the muzzle flashes in the woodline. "Get your heads down, Doc!" a voice roared from the commander's hatch. It was Captain Abe Baum, the hard-bitten spearhead commander of Patton's elite vanguard. His face was covered in a thick layer of grease and road dust, and his eyes burned with the aggressive intensity of a man who took Patton's motto, attack, attack, and attack again, as gospel. Baum didn't wait for his infantry to deploy. He gripped the handles of the tank's mounted .50 caliber machine gun and began raking the tree line, sending heavy, thumb-sized kinetic rounds punching through the German timber. The woods erupted in a spectacular storm of splintering pine and shredded camouflage. Behind Baum's tank, 3 M3 half-tracks veered off the road into the mud, their armored side panels dropping instantly. "Go, go, clear the ridge!" yelled an armored infantry sergeant, vaulting into the brush. The 3rd Army troopers didn't hesitate. They were Patton's favorite shock troops, trained to fight with raw, terrifying momentum. Armed with M1 Garands and Browning automatic rifles, they charged straight up the slick, muddy incline into the teeth of the SS positions. The ambushers suddenly found themselves the ambushed. The SS troops, who had expected to casually plunder a defenseless medical column, were completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of American firepower. At point-blank range, the American armored infantry systematically broke the German lines. The heavy thud of BAR fire and the sharp metallic ping of empty Garand clips ejecting echoed through the dense German forest. From the tree line, a German Panzerfaust team stepped out, aiming a shoulder-fired rocket directly at the side hull of Baum's Sherman. Before they could pull the trigger, an M8 Greyhound armored car tore around the rear of the convoy. Its 37mm canister shot, essentially a massive shotgun shell filled with steel balls, cleared the brush in a single devastating blast. Within 10 minutes of the Vanguard's arrival, the fanatical German unit was entirely shattered. The survivors broke and fled deeper into the fog-shrouded valley, pursued by the relentless fire of the American vanguard. The road fell into a sudden, ringing silence, broken only by the hiss of punctured radiators and the low, idling thrum of the Sherman's radial engine. March 26th, 1945, 14:55 hours. The Hanau Valley Road, Germany. The ringing silence of the forest was filled with the heavy smell of cordite, burning diesel, and scorched pine. The threat had been entirely neutralized. Captain Abe Baum swung his leg over the rim of the Sherman's turret and dropped heavily onto the mud-slicked pavement, his boots splashing near the charred remnants of the German half-track. He unbuttoned his chin strap, letting his helmet tilt back as he walked toward the medical column. "Status, Doc?" Baum asked, his voice low and gravelly from days of breathing in tank exhaust and battlefield dust. Captain Stern stepped out of the ditch, wiping a mixture of freezing mud and sweat from his face. His hands were still trembling slightly, but his focus was already returning to his patients. "We lost the lead driver, Captain. 2 other medics are wounded, but the patients in the back survived the spray. If you hadn't broken over that ridge when you did, we wouldn't be standing here." Baum glanced at the red crosses painted on the mangled sides of the Dodge ambulances, his jaw tightening. "The old man expects us to bypass strong points to keep the momentum going," Baum said, referring to General Patton. "But the Third Army doesn't leave its healers behind to be butchered by fanatical remnants. Not on my watch." Already, the armored infantrymen of the 4th Armored were moving with practiced efficiency. They weren't just shock troops, they were problem solvers. 2 mechanics from an M3 half-track were already under the hoods of the functioning ambulances, splicing wires and patching punctured radiators with heavy tape to get the convoy back on its wheels. Other troopers helped Lieutenant Evelyn Miller transfer the patients from the disabled lead vehicle into an armored personnel carrier, ensuring they would have steel plates between them and the hostile